Watterson, thank you so much for making time for me and making time for all of us to be part of this video series. And it's going to focus on doing business in Asia in particular. So Ian, you're the Senior Vice President, America and Asia Pacific and Managing Director of CSG International. Thanks for making time. And look, you obviously cover a lot of that region that we're focusing on, and you're doing that in leading the transformation of CSG's Asia Pacific business, converting to a cloud recurring revenue business model, and really delivering, managing billions of critical customer interactions annually. I know that CSG has an award-winning suite of software and services, but it would be lovely if we could just start with you explaining what does that all actually look like, what does it mean, and how can we best imagine your products and services?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Gabrielle, for the invitation, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of the series. Yeah, so CSG is a US headquartered business, just short of $1 billion. We were last year in 2019 in revenue, and growing strongly. My remit, as you say, is across Asia Pacific. So a good way to think about that geographically is South Asia, so India, Sri Lanka, across to Far East Asia, so China, Taiwan, and then down to New Zealand and Australia. So it's very interesting. Previously, yes, I managed the Americas, which was, I always say, Argentina to Alaska. Living in the US, and prior to that, I was based in Europe, in the UK, in very similar technology industries. In terms of what do we do? What is CSG's product base? How do we benefit society and all our stakeholders? We build, design, build, develop, and launch platforms that basically, a good way to think about it is in different sectors like cable and entertainment. So our customers are people like Disney globally, or Comcast in the US, the largest cable provider. Telecommunications, so companies like Telstra here in Australia, Deutsche Telekom in Europe, BT, Verizon in the United States. And then we also have a business in financial services, which is mainly around payments processing. And then we have what we call a customer communication business, which is all the interactions between a customer and a corporation. So a good example is in the US, a large pharmacy chain is called Walgreens. They're one of our very large customers, and we manage all their outbound communications, all their SMSs, all their app communications to their customers about prescriptions or any kind of medicines that you need. But we do that across a range of different industries, a whole bunch of different verticals within that outbound messaging business. And yeah, so we both build the software, design, build it. We build it globally, and we also operate it. So we have a managed services team globally who operate everything, basically both third-party systems and our own systems, for mainly telecoms and cable companies. But increasingly as well in that kind of financial services and payments model. And that's led to our main business model is a SaaS, as you mentioned, recurring revenue model, where we will basically sign up multi-year contracts that allows a customer to have an assured cost basis for their platforms and gives us the recurring revenue base that we need to grow our business.
That's a great summary of what that all is, and it's very multi-sectoral, isn't it? And also your remit regionally is there's a lot of diversity in all of that. So the types of clients, finally, that's a broad range, isn't it? How does the organizational structure then function, especially with that remit around Asia Pacific in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, and CSG is a very forward-looking organization. We're always interested in optimizing our structures. Constant improvement is a theme throughout the whole of CSG. So we always see our structures as evolving. all the time, which is part of the dynamic environment of the company that I love. At the moment, and for the past couple of years, we've been structured with 3 business units. So one based on digital monetization and revenue management. That's mainly our billing systems. One around the payment systems that I mentioned, and one around the outbound messaging functionality. So those systems, those business units basically provide the delivery organizations globally to all our customers. And then across the top of those, we have geographical regions. So the Americas, Europe, and what I run, Asia Pacific. And we basically sit across the 3 business units, and we interact. Everything to do with the client is what we. So we manage everything from the marketing, from the front end, through to the sales cycle, through to delivery, and then post delivery, operating the system. We have client business executives who are responsible to the customer for fulfilling their business requirements.
Yeah. So in what sense is that dynamic? And it sounds like it's rather agile, but how does that actually function?
Yeah, it's a wonderful matrix. It's a very large matrix organization, as most large organizations are at the moment. And our we're soon to change CEO to Brian Shepherd, who's my manager as of January 1st, and he describes it very well. He said that in the matrix, the cross-functional points between the business vertical and the horizontal business unit, the person at that intersection is the absolutely critical person. Yeah. Because if they cannot work the matrix, which means being able to work with people who don't report to you, then, so to give you an example, in Asia Pacific, there's probably about just short of 3,000 people, give or take, across the whole region. Out of that, a very small proportion work directly for me, but I am the most senior representative in the region of the business. So the entire business is my responsibility, and my job is to gather the whole of CSG to fulfill the customer's mission. That's how I view it, and to lead the whole business forward so that their objectives are enabled by the platforms we supply.
All right, perfect. Yeah, thanks for that. So if we take that more locational perspective on things, you've mentioned, for example, India, but there's also other parts of Southeast Asia, and we know about the diversity of those locations. So I would assume that there's a particular motivation to have particular types of business operations in those different locations. Can you talk to that? So which location has which purpose? Not mentioning all of them, of course, but maybe a couple of examples.
No, that's really interesting. So first of all, I love diversity, and I love different cultures as well. I always have, and having lived in different cultures on different continents, like yourself, Gabrielle, I just love meeting new people and new types of people and learning about them. So first of all, we need to be culturally relevant in the markets we support. So as you say, so we have teams in India, we have teams in Southeast Asia, we have teams here in Australia. That's in terms of the customer-facing teams. How we support those teams is a delicate balance between being close to our customers whilst achieving the optimal cost mix. So we have centers of excellence, for example, in Bangalore in India, here in Brisbane in Australia, in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, where those teams may focus on a particular solution or platform. There'll normally be a number of geographical or historical reasons why there's particular skills on that platform. It might have been an acquisition, or we might have transitioned to a lower cost geography in order to do that. But most of our customers are served by, as I say, a delicate, very deliberately managed structure of a small team close to the customer who are gathering requirements, feeding those back to a team who are in a lower cost center, who are able to then build, develop, and release functions. And then we're able to fulfill the customer's needs and if you like, translate, and I mean that not in a sense of language, but in a sense of technology what the business outcome will be of new features or new deployments to the customer by being close to them and understanding their business problems. That's what. So a great example is we have teams in Sydney who sit near our customers in Sydney. They're a relatively small team in the tens of people. They serve very large customers, many telcos in Sydney, but they're supported by everyone from a Canadian team to an Indian team to a Malaysian team, to an Irish team in Galway, Ireland, about depending on what specialism they need or what platform they're talking about.
Yeah. So it's all really very strongly interconnected, and it seems like you are able to leverage the advantages of each location or at least region in a particular way and making them connect in that way. Is that correct?
Yeah, so a great example is we've talked a lot about Asia Pacific. In the Americas, it's very similar. So when I was living in Atlanta, or recently when I was working in Denver, the nearshore operation there is based in Bogota, Colombia.
Yes.
Because for the US or for the US customer teams to work with India is very, very difficult. It's the exact opposite timescale wise. So whilst it's good because you can send stuff off at the end of the day and it's worked on overnight, it's bad because there's quite often misunderstandings and that can lead to errors. So we've created a center in Bogota. We did an analysis of all the countries in Latin America, geopolitically, culturally, technological ability, recruitment, potential, how many graduates are coming out in the IT space, etc. And we found Bogota to be a great general place to do business. So we set up a nearshore team there. So similar to Bangalore, which is my nearshore low cost for Asia Pacific, we have Bogota in the Americas that serves that. And when we serve our customers, we look for the majority of staff to come from that center because that keeps our costs low. And then the more expensive staff who are close to the customer, say in the US or Australia or Singapore or Taiwan, those customers to be close, those teams to be close to the customer.
It sounds like you're probably able to leverage that very nicely as well for digital innovation, which seems to be absolutely core to your business, and that's what you're bringing as well to your customers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Digital innovation it's an often used term, right? And some people are very tired of the term, but yeah, if you drop the digital and just say, we transform our customers' business, that's what we aim to do. And if you say digitally is by technology enabling business transformation, that's absolutely what we do. We come into situations where customers have legacy systems, where they want to evolve their business, but their systems are restricting them. They can't. Lots of our customers can't bundle products, can't bring other vendors' products to market with their own, can't go into new markets, all because of their ecosystem. Their technology ecosystem is really restricting, and so we look at a lot of ways to do that. A lot of different technology approaches to solving those problems.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the COVID-19 context probably is also one that makes your clients, your customers probably think even more about those types of avenues.
Yeah. You would have seen, one of our big clients in Australia is Telstra send home over 20,000 people. That creates huge technology challenges for systems that are normally run by IT teams on site the whole time. And also our customers then interacting with their customers. So we're B2B, our B2C, that B2C relationship has been very difficult. And one of our new areas is customer experience and how our customers interact with their customers. And if they weren't digitally enabled before COVID on very mobile app-based customer engagement, very rapid response times, with social media enabled customer engagement as well, then a lot of our customers have tried to very dramatically move to that as fast as they can, because call centers have been flooded. We've seen big failures globally around call centers being flooded with inquiries. And the way to deal with that is to move customers out of those call centers to a non-personal interaction. All the data shows that actually customers prefer to do it themselves. They'll spend longer solving their own problem themselves than they will at a call center, and they'll be more satisfied at the end of that than if they've sat in a queue and somebody else has solved the problem for them. It's a strange psychological kind of dilemma, but all the data shows that that's how we prefer to work.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you about customer centricity, and here we go. We've definitely learned a really interesting example. And does that actually vary across the region? So again, coming back to more the Asia region, do you see variations in terms of interacting with customers and how they interact then with others?
Yeah, very definitely, very definitely. One of our customers is Telenor, out of Norway, and they split their Asia business, which is very large. It's 60% of their global revenue, into emerged Asia and emerging Asia, which is really interesting. So Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, to an extent Thailand. You've got a much more emerged. Indonesia maybe is on the border. Then you've got emerging such as Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia. A lot of those countries that have a long way to go in terms of technology transformation, but also cultural, because the technology, like the iPhone, changes culture, right? We all know that from seeing our sons and daughters walk with their phones down, their faces down all the time. It changes the culture, the technology, right? So as that cultural change happens as the technology is introduced, we're taking leapfrogs. But definitely countries like Singapore are the most advanced, some of the most advanced in the world. South Korea, one of the most advanced 5G nations globally. Taiwan, incredibly enabled. Obviously China as well. So yeah, there's quite a divide culturally, and it's generally by the extent to which technology has been able to transform and then culturally change people. Because I believe in evolved countries or emerged, people get more and more acceptable to change. The curve increases. People accept and expect change because technology evolves so rapidly for them.
Right. Yeah.
They get bored very rapidly. There's an iPhone every year, right? And people are bored 11 months in with their old phone. So it's very interesting.
And so when you move into a new country, and for example, you speak about Bangalore, and you might have been established there for many years, but when you would come into a country, would that typically be through first a partnership, or is it more an M&A type of investment mode, or is it a pure and simple solely owned foreign direct investment?
Any of the above.
Okay.
So but we would normally go in on the back of our customers. So similar to say a GE model, where they globally expanded on the back of US corporations becoming global. We're quite similar in that our customers quite often are big groups. If you look at some of the big groups that exist, either financial groups or telecoms or cable or media, like Disney. So Disney globally is our customer. They're very large in Japan. So our presence in Japan is through our deal with Disney, which is a global deal, and they then basically took us into there. But any of those options, we have a very strict criteria to evaluate whether we form an entity, or as you mentioned, do an M&A or any other type of vehicle. We're open to any way in. It's a function of what fulfills the customer's needs primarily, but also our own tax basis. There's a lot of international tax issues nowadays with residency and particularly for technology companies, and actually particularly for US technologies companies going into countries, we have to be very careful that we're doing the right thing in each country in terms of tax payments and reporting and being very accurate. So we're very, very diligent. CSG is very, very values-based culture to do the right thing in every market we serve. So we make very deliberate, very considered Uh, but we'll consider
Yeah.
any type of vehicle.
And so within the region, so let's take the Asian region again, within the region like that, do you feel that there's a lot of learning from one country to the other as you're moving into or out of particular markets?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. There is, and as I mentioned before, that's part of what I love is going to, and I've been to every country in Southeast Asia. I've been to India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, everywhere basically. And every country is different. The way business is done is different. The regulations are different. Everything from data sovereignty in terms of for us as a cloud company, as a SaaS company, where we can keep data, like which cloud we have to use, because Microsoft Azure has different nodes to AWS, so to Google Cloud, so we're able to put solutions differently in different places, or we might put a solution on premise, so in a customer's premise, because we're not allowed to access the data from Indonesia is a great example. You can't even access a solution from outside. Recently, they've signed an agreement with Singapore where they're allowed to do that, but previously we couldn't service Indonesia from anywhere but Indonesia. But yeah, culturally as well, the way of doing business. So in Vietnam, we always need a partner. We can't prime our opportunities there. We always have to go through a local registered agent. So in those kind of situations, Japan is a country where if you don't have a local fully Japanese speaking enabled team, and they've been there for a long time and have trust with a critical part of that market, you can't do business. You as a global business, we're used to be able to, before COVID, fly into a country, conduct a number of due diligence and exercises and execute deals and drive a business. Japan, you probably need to be there 2, 3, 5 years to earn trust. Before you can do business there.
So Ian, what's in your toolbox to make sure that's doing business in Asia and across Asia is where it is successful? If you would, sort of give us 2 or 3 of your main tools that you would definitely tell people to use and to consider, what would that be?
Yeah, look, first of all, I'd say be selective about your markets. It's very easy. When I landed in Australia from the US, I actually didn't really appreciate the size of the geography. You have India, Southeast Asia, China, Australia, and New Zealand. 4 enormous land masses with a huge distance between them and very different culturally. You need to look at the markets and very thoroughly evaluate where you're going to put your resources and where you're going to decide there's opportunity for your business. And then once you've done that, and that's a very big decision because you probably can't cover all of the markets. So Japan, which is one of the world's largest economies, are you going to do business there? Yes. You need a presence. You either need an entity or a branch, and you need a staff, and you need to be prepared for no business there for a couple of years. Like it's a real business. India, completely different. Pre-COVID and even actually now we're seeing during COVID, it's still very face-to-face. And Indians like to negotiate quite often in Hindi. And, as a Westerner coming in, you need local representatives. You need a local team there who are able to do that, who are able to service a customer, who are able to discuss locally their requirements. It's a very different way of doing business than in the West. Southeast Asia, completely different. Again, and Australia and New Zealand is very Western. So yeah, I would say the key thing is investigate and pick your markets very, very carefully. The incomes in those markets are very different as well. So there's a lot of good TED Talks actually about how to grow in India around reverse innovation. So basically take a sophisticated Western product and descale it, de-automate it, make it simpler. And then because in India, you need to sell at scale rather through sophistication, you need to get a lot of Of
Yeah.
units shipped. Yeah, rather than single high value, you need to have a lot of lower value units that you're able to make on. So you need to evaluate. So each market has its own characteristics like that.
Indeed.
Investigate them, and then you need to very thoroughly work out the way to go to market in each of those countries. As I say, in Vietnam, you're going to need to investigate agents. And by the way, it's very easy to choose the wrong agent, because everyone will tell you they can get you that customer, and they can, do many things for you. They might not be able to. So we've actually found a very good way to do that is to go to the end customer and say, who would you trust to represent us, and find that representative office or company. And the bigger the company, the better, because the more stable they're able to offer you that long-term future. And then set your business plan expectations appropriately. So I was talking to my future CEO, Brian Shepherd, and I said, I want to build the best, highest growth, most profitable business in the world for CSG. He said, Ian, with respect, Asia benchmarked has lower profitability than Western Europe or the US. So he said, when I look at your business in Asia Pacific over the next 3 to 5 years, I don't expect you to have the highest percentage profit per dollar of revenue compared to, say, Western Europe or the US. You may be higher growth, but I would expect your profit percentage to not be as high as them. And he's right. He's absolutely right. So set your expectations with if you're working for an MNC, appropriately, that yes, you can get strong revenue growth. We've seen that. We've doubled our business in the last 5 years. But your margins may not be as strong as a more developed market.
Right. Well, I think I need to ask you now to look into a crystal ball around the digitally enabled future of Asia. What do you think that is going to look like? So, from a business and from a customer perspective, probably.
Yeah. From a business point of view, COVID's been very interesting because it's forced a lot of companies to work remotely and work digitally. So it's accelerated, particularly for the emerging economies, a lot of those benefits. I think that will continue. I think post-COVID things will not go back to normal. Everybody's very used to working at home. All my team calls are now video calls. Our office has reopened here, but we have about 15% of staff attending, which out of the size of the office, and that's universal. That's across the offices we've reopened. We haven't reopened all of them, but the ones we've reopened, we have a very small percentage of staff, because staff appreciate the flexibility and the time savings and the cost savings of not commuting. And they've enabled themselves to work from home. So I wouldn't be surprised in a crystal ball in the future if my offices are smaller, my work teams are much more distributed at home. And for my customers' businesses, that's going to force this digital customer engagement much stronger. I think there's going to be a much bigger demand for that. And how do those businesses get to that end state of digital engagement with their customers faster? So rather than changing out all their legacy systems, how do we put a layer in that enables us to interact very quickly, and downstream interacts with all my legacy as well, but gives my customer that seamless omni-channel type of experience? Because with people working remotely and people being very flexible around their families going forward, I think that's going to be critical. China is going to keep growing strongly. It's still going to dominate Asia Pacific as it does today. Geopolitically, we've got some very interesting dynamics at the moment. I have a potential opportunity in Pakistan, and have a lot of issues between that and India, and then I have a lot of issues between India and China. I have a lot of issues between Australia and China. So the geopolitics as well is going to continue to emerge and dominate businesses.
So that adds to the complexity of things.
Adds to the fun of working it all out.
Indeed, that's a very good point. So look, coming back to the fact that you used to also have the role of vice president in Americas. You were at Intech prior to that, so you know a lot of regions in the world and have worked across them. What do you think is the key differentiator when you look at Asia and then other regions in the world, in the way in which we're differentiator and maybe even connector between regional activities across CSG, and across your role in all of that?
Yeah, gosh, that's a huge question. I love the space that we work in, which is basically telecoms, media, financial services, and technology, because it is mainly global. So, as I mentioned, we staff and serve customers from multiple geographies and across the world. So, inherently, my business is globally connected. My customers are, so my business is. The issues that or the business that I grew in Europe versus the business that I grew in the Americas versus the business here now in Asia Pacific, it's a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same issues. When I was in Buenos Aires in Argentina about 18 months ago, and I was like, gosh, this feels like Vietnam or Thailand. Just
so you see similarities and similar challenges or priorities you need to take.
Different culture maybe.
Okay.
In terms of Thailand, say, versus Argentina, slightly different culture, but actually business-wise, a lot of the same issues, which is an economy that's trying to emerge, trying to be sustainable, trying to build itself on its core differentiators, whatever that economy might be, and trying to grow into the next generation, if you like. There's a huge income gap between some of the emerged economies and the emerging, particularly, say, Western Europe versus Eastern Europe or Russia. There's huge differences. And actually, when we look at doing business in Asia, the geopolitical issues are becoming more and more pervasive and difficult. So we've seen a closing of borders, as a nationalism that's reducing, and countries are saying, I don't want, if you're going to supply me from this country, I'm not interested in that. And as a US business, we have anti-boycott, that we're not allowed to agree to contracts that boycott different countries. So we're not allowed to do that. So it is going forward. I really hope that there will be a geopolitical kind of reasonableness comes into space, and international business is allowed to resume. Really, we'll see what happens in the US election, right? And I don't know if that will change anything. But this polarization, this nationalism is not helping. Definitely the global businesses that we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that has to do with cross-border and cross-regional activity is somewhat hampered by that. Is there any specific additional advice that you would like to share with our viewers? And I would think let's address in particular people who are maybe more on the junior and side of working for multinational cross-border business, executive students who are interested, and of course executives as well who are interested in doing more business in Asia or also across Asia. What's your sort of final word on that?
I would say, so first of all, don't underestimate how difficult it is. A lot of Western companies, European or US, come to Asia, and it's very interesting. There's some very popular countries for people to try and enter. Singapore is normally the first place to go, first port of call. And then normally people will try and expand in Southeast Asia into, say, Malaysia and Thailand. What we find is every single Western company is there. So the competition is red hot, and the growth that you may expect out of doing that may not come because they're already ultra competitive marketplaces. So I would say, if you get the opportunity, go there, do your investigation, visit, meet your customers and see what they need, because you might be surprised you might be surprised when you meet your customers, actually, first of all, how sophisticated they are.
Mm-hmm.
And how advanced and how developed. It continues to impress me, just how much progress, a lot of those have made. Some of the evolutions of those economies are far beyond what someone like myself from Western Europe expects of Asia. Far in advance of them. In reality, South Korea is an amazing place. Seoul is one of the most advanced cities in the world. So I would say, yeah, get out there, go see the businesses, do your homework. Don't rely just on data, because the data may show, oh, this is a lower income, but it's high growth. So therefore, if I do that analysis, I'd probably be able to build a high growth business there. Well, you may not be able to, because everybody else has done the same data analysis and they're all there. So you might not win a single deal. So I would say, go there, thoroughly investigate the business opportunities. And if you have a business there, go and understand your customers, because they may be way more sophisticated, way more interesting, and know their market so well that you might think you're bringing lessons to them that they already know. So don't underestimate the leaders or the executives in a lot of those markets.
Very much appreciated that you've provided not only these insights, but also really tangible examples for all of us to better understand doing business in Asia from your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It's been a pleasure.